The moment Maxine told me I wasn't invited to Lisa's wedding, I felt a chill crawl up my spine like a cold draft sneaking under a door. "You'd embarrass us in photos." The text read, cold and precise, like a scalpel. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon while I was at work, managing yet another crisis for the nonprofit. That text was a slap I didn't expect, and yet, somehow, it didn't shock me entirely. I've spent so many years being the invisible one in this family, the steady, silent force who fixes problems no one talks about. At 39, I've built a life juggling my responsibilities as a nonprofit executive and the unspoken role I play within the Irwin family. I'm the one who always pays the bills when no one else will, the one who quietly sent $2,400 last month alone to cover the family's property taxes, who wired money to Lisa when she was struggling to make rent. No one says thank you. Not Maxine, not Lisa, not even Dad anymore. Maxine controls everything, in the family, in our interactions, in how we see ourselves. She's the queen of guilt trips, weaving a web of emotional control that turns everyone into pawns. She casts herself as a martyr, always the victim, and makes sure we all know it. I'm the quiet provider, the one who keeps the house running, yet I'm treated like I don't exist. I hold the deed to the family home, something Maxine doesn't know I'm quietly ready to use if I must. But I cling to hope that one day they'll see past the surface, beyond Maxine's manipulations, and recognize me as more than just the quiet provider. Sometimes at night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they'll ever understand how much I've sacrificed. It's a lonely feeling, being essential and invisible all at once. The sting of that text lingered longer than I wanted to admit. Still, I told myself, she's stressed. It's just the wedding craziness. But inside, a small voice whispered, maybe this is how they really see you. Despite that, I keep my head high, my dignity intact, and my resolve quietly strong. Growing up with Maxine was like walking a tightrope stretched over a pit of icy water. One false step and you'd drown in her disapproval. I remember my 16th birthday so vividly. Lisa had a lavish party with balloons, a DJ, and dozens of friends. Everyone shouted her name and showered her with gifts. Me? I got a simple card and a phone call from Maxine. "Lisa's the star," Mom said, as if that was supposed to make the sting less sharp. It never did. At 12, I caught her talking to a friend on the phone, saying I was too sensitive and never quite good enough. I told myself it was tough love, that if I just tried harder, she'd finally be proud of me. But those words echoed for years, haunting every achievement. There was the day I won a scholarship for academic excellence, something I'd worked my fingers to the bone for. I came home clutching that letter, eyes bright with hope. Maxine barely looked up from her magazines. No congratulations, no pride in her voice. Yet she would boast endlessly about Lisa's cheerleading trophies, framing them like the family's crown jewels. It was clear then. Her cold treatment wasn't random. It was calculated, a weapon she wielded to keep me small, to keep me quiet. I learned to disappear into the background, to avoid conflict at all costs. Being seen meant being targeted, and I chose invisibility. Over the years, I became the family's silent financial lifeline, a role I often shouldered alone. I've paid $15,000 toward the mortgage over 5 years, kept the house from slipping away when others hesitated. When Lisa faced medical bills that piled up to $3,500, I stepped in without question, cutting back on my own needs. 2 vacations canceled, countless dinners skipped, all to send money home. Daniel, my husband, watches this with a mixture of pride and concern. "Why do you give so much and expect so little in return?" he asks gently. I don't have a good answer. I hold on to hope that maybe one day my sacrifices will be recognized. Lisa sometimes shows gratitude, but always carefully, never crossing Mom's invisible lines. Maxine's manipulation keeps everyone on edge, walking on eggshells. What no one knows is that the house, the family's anchor, is in my name, along with all the inheritance papers. It's my quiet secret, a safety net I cling to should things unravel. I haven't told a soul. It's not a weapon I want to brandish yet. but knowing it's there gives me a strange sense of power I rarely allow myself to feel. I'm the silent backbone of this family, the one who holds the pieces together even when no one looks my way. And sometimes, that's the loneliest place to be. The day of Lisa's bridal shower was supposed to be joyful, a celebration of new beginnings, but it turned into a public wound I hadn't expected. Maxine's voice cut through the laughter like a knife when she said, "We don't want Felicity here. She'd embarrass us with her drama." The room froze. Forks paused midair. Conversations halted. A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, uncertain how to react. My face burned, a hot flush of humiliation creeping up my neck. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, a silent anchor in the storm. I wanted to scream at her, to demand why she treated me like a ghost, but I swallowed the words and whispered quietly, "If that's how you feel." I left the room early, heart pounding, the sharp sting of rejection cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. Outside, the cold air hit my skin, but it did nothing to cool the fire of hurt and confusion burning inside me. I told myself it was just stress, that Maxine probably didn't mean it. But the seed of doubt had been planted, growing quietly in the fertile soil of years of neglect. Was there ever a chance for reconciliation? That question lingered, heavy and unanswered, as I walked away from the smiling faces inside and into the shadows where I always seemed to belong. After that first sting of exclusion, Maxine seemed to sense my retreat, and instead of easing off, she tightened her grip. It was subtle at first. Whispers over coffee cups with aunts, knowing glances exchanged among cousins when I walked into a room. I caught snippets. "Felicity's just too sensitive," one would say, as if my feelings were some sort of inconvenient illness. At family gatherings, the air thickened with passive pressure to just let it go, as if my pain was a burden they all shared reluctantly. Maxine worked her magic behind closed doors too. I overheard Daniel's voice low and confused one evening, and then her sharp reply, "Felicity's problems? They're all in her head. She's imagining things." The words twisted inside me, a poison slowly eroding my certainty. Even Lisa, who once seemed like an ally, kept her distance, too scared or too loyal to speak up. I found myself doubting my own perspective, questioning whether I was the one who'd lost touch with reality. The isolation tightened like a noose, each breath a struggle against the strangling silence around me. I tried to reach out, desperate for a sliver of peace. I organized a family meeting, hoping that honesty might break through the walls Maxine had built. Sitting across from her, I spoke calmly, laying bare my feelings and reminding her of the sacrifices I'd made quietly all these years. Maxine's eyes shimmered with tears, but not the kind that soften hearts. She painted herself as the exhausted, misunderstood mother, fighting to hold together a broken family on the brink of collapse. "You don't understand," she said, voice trembling just enough to feel genuine. Then, with a venomous edge, she threatened to cut me off financially if I didn't stop this drama. My Uncle Richard, supposed to mediate, sided with her, calling me too rigid, like I was the problem in this tangled web. I left that room crushed, the weight of rejection sinking deep into my bones. My hope for peace had backfired, deepening the divide instead of bridging it. Then came the evening that shattered any remaining illusion of safety. At a company gala, where my family was invited as guests, Maxine seized the moment to humiliate me in front of my colleagues. Her voice rose with deliberate clarity as she revealed private financial details, accusing me of using family money to buy a fancy car, implying I was selfish, reckless, a user. The room went silent, and I felt the sting of every pair of eyes shifting away in discomfort. Daniel's colleagues exchanged awkward glances, some casting sympathetic looks my way, but no one stepped up to defend me. Lisa whispered an apology, but it felt hollow, a small shield against the overwhelming storm Maxine had unleashed. This wasn't just personal cruelty anymore. It was a calculated attack on my reputation, my professional standing. The damage was tangible, whispers and doubts that followed me back to the office, a subtle but unmistakable shift in how my network saw me. Maxine's words had sliced through my life's work, and there was no accidental slip in her venom. This was deliberate, a poison meant to ruin me. Despite the carnage, I reached out again, this time to support Lisa in planning her baby shower. It was a genuine offer, a bridge I hoped might mend at least one fractured tie. I told Maxine quietly, I need respect, not just money. For a moment, I thought she might hear me, see me, but her smile was sweet, cold, dismissive. I'm protecting the family from your drama, she said, as if I were the villain in a story only she could tell. When I asked for an honest chance to rebuild trust, she looked right through me and refused. The line she drew was sharp and final, cutting through any hope I'd dared to hold. In that moment, the bitter truth settled like ice in my chest. I had given everything I could, and it wasn't enough. The family I'd tried to save had chosen her version of reality, and I was left standing alone, a ghost in my own home. Maxine's latest blow came wrapped in whispered rumors that spread like wildfire before I even had a chance to respond. She painted me as unstable, manipulative, words so cruel they echoed in the hollow silence I found myself trapped in. Even Lisa, caught in Maxine's web of control and fear, pulled away. The sister I once confided in became a stranger, her messages sparse, her voice distant. Daniel remained my only anchor, but even his steady presence couldn't drown out the gnawing emptiness inside me. At night, when the world quieted and my armor fell away, I whispered to myself, maybe I am the problem. The words tasted bitter, but felt dangerously close to truth. Twisting around the raw ache of rejection, my heart clenched with exhaustion, not just physical, but a deeper fatigue that felt like giving up on something I could never fully grasp. The house felt colder without their warmth, the walls echoing the absence of laughter and shared memories. I sat on the couch, fingers trembling as I clutched a forgotten family photo, its edges curled and faded. My reflection in the window was a shadow I barely recognized, eyes rimmed with weariness, lips pressed tight to hold back tears that had no place. Was I really the one driving them away? The loneliness pressed down like a weight, suffocating and relentless. But beneath the despair, something flickered. A quiet resolve, fragile but unyielding. I wasn't sure where it came from or how long it would last, but it whispered that I wasn't finished yet. Maybe, just maybe, I still had a fight left in me. I tried to remind myself of the years I'd poured into this family, the sacrifices made quietly, the nights spent worrying about bills instead of resting. But those memories brought no comfort. They only sharpened the ache of being unseen, unheard. Maxine's venom had seeped into every corner of my life, turning love into suspicion, support into silence. The betrayal wasn't just hers. It was the collective turning of backs, the choosing of appearances over truth. I closed my eyes, the sting of tears threatening to break free. Daniel's hand found mine and squeezed gently, grounding me when I felt adrift. "You're not alone," he said softly. But even his words couldn't chase away the shadow that had settled deep inside me. Sleep came fitfully, if at all. Each night was a battle to keep my mind from spiraling, to silence the relentless question, had I failed them all? But beneath that doubt, a seed of something stronger took root, something cold, clear, and determined. I wasn't just the broken sister they dismissed. I was more. I just had to find a way to remember who. The storm wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. 2 years had passed since Lisa's wedding. The cruel exclusion, the whispered judgments, the silence that had stretched between us like a chasm. Standing in the courthouse that day, the sterile air thick with tension, I barely registered the proceedings. My thoughts were elsewhere, circling the quiet dread that had settled in my chest. Then, unexpectedly, Maxine's phone buzzed beside her. She glanced down, her expression shifting, and then I saw the text. "We need a character witness. Please come." The words hit me like a physical blow, cold, sharp, and utterly bewildering. The woman who had shunned me, who had worked so hard to erase me, was now publicly calling on me for support? The shock was almost surreal, a cruel twist in a story that had long felt like a nightmare, but the shock only deepened. Later, alone in a quiet corner of the courthouse, I rifled through some documents related to the family home, something I'd long suspected, but never confirmed. My fingers trembled as I uncovered the truth. Maxine had been siphoning off my savings, Nearly $80,000 quietly transferred into her personal accounts over the years. Money I had painstakingly saved, money I believed was meant to secure our family's future. The realization was devastating. A betrayal etched in cold, hard numbers, the illusion shattered, replaced by a clarity I hadn't dared to hope for. This wasn't just emotional manipulation, it was theft. The foundation of everything I'd believed about my family, about trust, lay in ruins. The weight of it settled over me, heavy and cold, but beneath it, a strange calm began to surface. The hurt was still there, raw and angry, but it was no longer the whole story. Now, I was no longer just the hurt daughter or the ignored sister. I was something else, someone who could see through the lies, who could begin to strategize, to fight back. The veil had lifted, and with it came a chilling understanding. I had to stop being the victim. It was time to be the strategist. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of control. Sitting alone in my study that evening, the house quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside, I replayed everything, the sacrifices I'd made, the countless moments I'd brushed off the sting of Maxine's cruelty as just family drama. But now, with the proof in my hands, the past sharpened into painful clarity. The anger inside me flared, no longer buried beneath confusion or hope. It burned, hot, fierce, relentless. It wasn't just about the money. It was about every insult, every betrayal, every time I'd been erased and dismissed. The pattern stretched back as far as I could remember. A lifetime of being sidelined and undermined. The theft was the final proof, the evidence I needed to confront the truth I'd been avoiding. I whispered into the empty room, "Never again." The words felt like a vow, a boundary I would no longer allow to be crossed. The house deed, the inheritance papers, the trail of money, they were no longer just documents. They were weapons, shields, and keys all at once. The grief for what was lost twisted into resolve. I was no longer the silent provider, the ignored sister, or the pawn in Maxine's game. I was Felicity, strong, clear-eyed, and ready to reclaim what was mine. The pain had forged something new inside me, a determination to take back control, to rewrite the narrative. The quiet desperation that had once defined me was replaced with a fierce clarity. Tears blurred my vision, but this time they were not of sorrow alone. There was something fierce in their fall, a cleansing fire. I wasn't certain what the next steps would be, but one thing was clear: I would never be powerless again. The battle was no longer about proving my worth to a family that refused to see it. It was about justice, respect, and finally, taking a stand that could not be ignored. That evening, I sat across from Daniel at the kitchen table, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows across his thoughtful face. I laid everything bare: Maxine's brazen theft, the years of manipulation, the betrayal that cut deeper than any wound. "She stole from me," I said, voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. "We can't let this go." Daniel's eyes locked with mine, his expression firm but cautious. "No," he agreed. "This isn't just about money. It's about respect, about not letting her continue to control you." It was the first time I felt I could share this burden openly, without filtering the pain or fear. Together, we began to map out a plan, legal, precise, and unyielding. I wanted to secure every financial account, notify my lawyer, and prepare myself for the inevitable battles ahead. We talked late into the night, the weight of years lifted slightly by the clarity of purpose. "I'm ready," I said, the words tasting strange but powerful on my tongue. It was the first time I embraced strategy over hope, action over waiting. Daniel reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "You're not alone," he said. "We'll do this together." The support steadied me in a way I hadn't known I needed. No more silence, no more invisible sacrifices. The fight was just beginning. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was stepping into the light, not as a victim, but as a woman reclaiming her life. The house, the money, the family's fragile facade, they were all pieces on a board I was finally learning to play. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I would never let Maxine's shadow define me again. This was my moment, and I was ready to take it. I sat at my desk, the soft hum of the evening settling around me as I spread out the bank statements, mortgage documents, and utility bills I'd been gathering for days. The numbers stared back like silent witnesses, each one a thread unraveling the tapestry Maxine had relied on for far too long. It was astonishing. She depended on me far more than I had ever admitted, and that realization shifted something deep within me. The mortgage on the house, still in my name, was a steady reminder of my quiet hold over the family's physical space. Monthly payments for electricity, water, and even her credit lines traced a pattern of silent dependence I could no longer ignore. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, her voice calm and steady on the other end. "Yes, Felicity, you have every right to reclaim those funds and enforce your property rights," she confirmed after I outlined the situation. "We need to document everything meticulously. Receipts, statements, contracts. You must create an airtight paper trail." I hung up feeling a flicker of power course through me for the first time in years. This wasn't just about money. It was about finally holding the invisible strings in my hands. I returned to the filing cabinet, pulling open drawers that hadn't been touched in months, finding copies of invoices, canceled checks, and even old letters that Maxine had tried to hide. The weight of their reliance pressed into me with a strange mix of relief and sorrow. They had leaned so heavily on my support, yet turned away when I needed them most. They need me more than I need them, I whispered to the empty room, the words tasting like both poison and promise. It wasn't pride, it was clarity. The balance of power was no longer tilted in favor of the lies and manipulation. I would proceed carefully, but this time, with every advantage meticulously mapped out. The quiet strength I felt was tempered by a solemn understanding. This was just the beginning. I reviewed the list once more, making notes in my journal as dusk turned to night. My hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with a cautious hope. There was a strange comfort in knowing the truth behind the facade, and more importantly, knowing that I was not helpless. If Maxine thought she could control me forever through guilt and silence, she had miscalculated. This inventory wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my dignity, piece by piece, with precision and care. I closed the cabinet with a quiet click, the sound echoing like a locked door behind me. The weeks that followed were a study in contrasts. On the surface, I maintained a calm, composed facade, as if nothing had shifted. At family dinners, I smiled and nodded, careful not to betray the storm of preparation roiling beneath my skin. Behind closed doors, though, I was ruthless in my silent work, changing passwords on accounts Maxine had brazenly accessed, updating legal documents, and revising my will to safeguard my assets from further exploitation. It was a quiet war waged in emails, phone calls, and visits to my attorney's office, where stacks of papers grew like an arsenal. Each meeting with my lawyer was clinical, cold, precise, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos I'd endured for years. "We'll draft notices and contracts that give you full control," she assured me, her eyes sharp with determination. I nodded, feeling the weight of every word. These were the weapons I needed to level the playing field. I even set up new banking alerts and security features, ensuring that any unauthorized access would trigger immediate notifications. The safety net I once assumed was gone had been rewoven, stronger, and more impenetrable. Yet outwardly, I played the part of the dutiful daughter, the calm mediator. Maxine, oblivious to the legal checkmate forming around her, continued her manipulations as usual, throwing casual barbs at family gatherings, painting me as the unreasonable one. I listened silently, my lips pressed tight to prevent any slip. The calm before the storm was deceptive. I felt like a time bomb, every quiet moment ticking louder beneath my skin. The tension was suffocating, but I embraced it. I was ready to explode, but on my terms, carefully, deliberately, and with undeniable force. One evening, as I sorted through a dusty stack of old family files, a brittle envelope slipped free and fell to the floor. Picking it up, I found a bank statement dated 5 years earlier, a statement that froze my blood. The withdrawals listed were substantial, totaling over $200,000, all taken from my personal accounts. And there, scrawled in a familiar but unwelcome hand, was Maxine's signature authorizing the transactions. I pressed the paper against my chest, breath catching in my throat. This wasn't an oversight or a desperate act. It was a calculated years-long theft. I immediately called my lawyer, voice steady but cold. "She's been stealing from me for years," I said simply, the fury barely contained beneath my calm facade. The lawyer's response was grave. "This changes everything. We're looking at hidden debts, forged signatures, false invoices, all pointing to systematic financial abuse." The betrayal sank deeper than I had dared imagine. This wasn't just a family spat or a moment of weakness. It was a deliberate, long-term plan to rob me blind under the guise of dependency and trust. The weight of this revelation ignited a fierce urgency inside me. The theft wasn't merely a justification for my fight. It demanded immediate action. I couldn't afford to hesitate or second-guess. The quiet, simmering anger transformed into a sharp, focused blade. "This ends now," I whispered to myself, eyes burning with determination. The violation was total, and my response had to be swift and absolute. I folded the statement carefully, securing it with the other damning evidence. The emotional betrayal was vast, but this financial proof made it undeniable and unforgivable. The first moves in this battle were decisive and unforgiving. I filed formal complaints with the bank and tax authorities, triggering immediate freezes on all accounts Maxine had accessed. The cold formality of the paperwork in my hands felt surreal. Official letters, certified notices, and demands for investigation. I watched as the institutions took action, locking down assets that had once been under her control. At the same time, I cut off all financial support, canceling automatic bill payments that had quietly flowed from me to her accounts, totaling over $3,500 a month. It felt ruthless, but necessary. The family's whispers started almost immediately. Rumors of problems began to circulate, but no one could piece together the real story behind the sudden financial changes. Maxine was blindsided, her usual confidence crumbling as she struggled to keep up with utilities and credit card bills she no longer had access to. I watched quietly from the sidelines, my phone buzzing with texts from Daniel. His words were steady, filled with cautious optimism. "You're doing the right thing," he said simply. I didn't respond with grand declarations. My calm was my strength. The first dominoes had fallen. The house felt charged with an unseen electricity, a tension that thickened the air. I wasn't shouting or making grand entrances. This was a silent checkmate, a game of patience and precision. Maxine's world was beginning to crack, and I was ready to watch it fracture. The legal battles awaited, but for now, the groundwork was laid. The quiet storm had begun, and there was no turning back. I sat back, exhaling slowly, the taste of victory mingling with the bitter tang of justice long overdue. The fight was no longer abstract, it was real, and it had only just begun. The day of the family meeting felt surreal as I stepped into the familiar yet suffocating room. Maxine's eyes darted nervously as I entered, flanked by my lawyer and carrying a thick binder filled with years of detailed evidence. The air was heavy, the tension almost tangible, and I sensed the silent calculations behind every glance. Maxine called the meeting to clear the air, but I was here for something much more significant. She tried to smile, faltered when I placed the deed to the house on the table, my name boldly printed as the legal owner. The room fell into shocked silence. Her face paled, lips trembling as she stammered, "This is a misunderstanding, Felicity. You don't know what you're saying." I met her gaze steadily, feeling a fierce calm settle deep inside me. I opened the binder, spreading out documents, bank statements, signed agreements, copies of forged signatures, all undeniable proof of the theft she had tried to bury. "I know exactly what I'm saying," I said quietly but firmly. "For years, you've taken from me under the guise of family, but today, the truth is in black and white. This house, these finances, will now be managed with transparency and fairness." I watched as her usual defenses crumbled, her control slipping away before our eyes. My relatives exchanged wary, astonished looks, some eyes wide with disbelief, others with a hesitant glimmer of understanding. The power balance shifted so palpably in that moment I could almost hear the invisible chains snapping. Maxine, who had always been the undisputed matriarch, was for the first time exposed, vulnerable, unmasked. I felt a strange surge of relief mixed with sorrow. This confrontation wasn't about victory alone. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice as I laid down my boundaries. No more lies. No more theft. This family will move forward on the foundation of truth. Maxine's lips quivered as if she wanted to speak, to protest, but no words came. The room's silence was deafening, heavy with the weight of years of secrets now brought to light. I realized then, with quiet certainty, that this moment was the turning point. The era of being controlled, manipulated, and silenced was over. I was standing not as the victim, but as the woman who finally owned her story and her future. In the days that followed, Maxine's world unraveled faster than I could have predicted. Creditors started calling, bills went unpaid, and the luxurious veneer she had polished for years began to chip away, revealing the chaos beneath. I ignored the flood of desperate phone calls and texts she sent, pleas for help, promises to change, and guilt-laden admissions designed to break me down. But I didn't respond. My focus was on repairing the damage she had inflicted, on putting the family's finances back on solid ground. It was painful to watch her unravel, but I knew that her collapse was the consequence of years of manipulation finally catching up. The carefully maintained image she had projected was cracking, and with it, her influence over those around her. Some family members who had once turned a blind eye or accepted Maxine's version of events began to approach me quietly, their voices tinged with doubt. They confessed to having questions they'd never dared to ask, confusion about the inconsistencies they'd witnessed but ignored. The cracks in Maxine's facade widened, and with each passing day, her isolation grew more pronounced. It was as though the house of cards she'd built was collapsing under the weight of its own deception. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and vindication. Sadness for what our family had lost, but vindication in knowing that the truth was finally being seen. The consequences of her actions were now undeniable and irreversible. Even as Maxine's world crumbled, I remained steadfast, refusing to be drawn into the chaos she was creating. My boundaries were clear, and I guarded them fiercely. I wasn't interested in engaging with her manipulations or revisiting the pain. Instead, I focused on rebuilding, slowly, deliberately, trust with those who had been hurt by her as well. The days were exhausting, filled with paperwork, conversations, and emotional labor, but I felt a growing sense of peace beneath the turmoil. The damage she'd caused was vast, but it was no longer hidden in the shadows. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without the weight of her control pressing down on me. Maxine's desperation escalated quickly. She threatened legal action, posted self-pitying stories on social media, and mobilized family members to defend her, painting herself as the aggrieved party. Her flying monkeys, those relatives and acquaintances who had long been her enablers, began spreading rumors and accusations, trying to sway opinion against me. She sent emails accusing me of destroying the family, wielding emotional blackmail like a weapon. But I was prepared. I didn't engage. I refused to be baited or drawn back into the toxic cycle. My response was firm silence and clear boundaries. I let the evidence speak for itself and kept my focus on healing and moving forward. A few relatives, perhaps seeing the truth for the first time, reached out to apologize for their previous silence or complicity. Their words were cautious, tinged with regret. I listened, acknowledging their apologies but making it clear that trust needed to be rebuilt, carefully, and over time. This was not about instant forgiveness. It was about accountability. I felt strength in my refusal to erase the past or pretend the betrayal hadn't happened. Maxine's attempts to manipulate only deepened her isolation. The more she lashed out, the more she alienated herself from the family she once ruled. Her reign of control was crumbling, and I was no longer afraid to stand in the light as the truth unfolded. 6 months later, my world has settled into a quieter, clearer place. Daniel and I have grown closer, our bond strengthened by the shared journey through turmoil. Freed from the shadows of family chaos, Our home now feels like a sanctuary rather than a battleground. I maintain limited, structured contact with Lisa, carefully guarded conversations where she is beginning to peel back the layers of Maxine's deception herself. The family home, once a symbol of conflict, is now under my management, and Maxine's access to finances is permanently cut off. I don't harbor bitterness for its own sake. My fight was never about revenge. It was about justice, respect, and reclaiming the boundaries I was denied for so long. Sitting in the quiet of my living room, I reflect on the long, painful journey. There's no dramatic victory, no triumphant fanfare, just a steady, serene sense of peace. I realize now that peace is worth more than any approval I once craved. It is a freedom I fought hard for, and it is mine to keep. The choice to protect myself and set limits feels empowering, not punitive. I'm no longer trapped by the need to fix or please others at my own expense. The future feels open, uncertain, but full of possibility. This new chapter is not about erasing the past, but carrying its lessons forward, stronger and wiser. For the first time, I truly feel like I am living life on my own terms, and that alone is a victory worth everything.